Yes? Oh, hello. That's all you told me I had to say.
Oh, man.
So I
Welcome.
did. I said hello.
Welcome.
Good evening. Welcome. Bienvenidos.
Oh, man. I made it. Ooh. How is everybody tonight? We are starting. We're ready to go. So we are going to be in the Noah story, which is Genesis chapter 6 through chapter 9. So I know it's a long page turning process to get there. Because of the volume of information, we are not going to read the story. We just are not. No show notes on this one. I'm still getting my voice back slowly, so I'm not. I have to stay hydrated. This is not an advertisement for Quick Trip, but they have good drinks.
It is a quick trip.
It is a quick trip. So we've been through a few things, and what did we say, Chelsea, is like when we're thinking Eastern and we're really diving into the story, what are the things that we're looking for? We're looking for what? Are we looking for things that we just go, yep, that makes total sense? Or
As an Easterner?
Yeah, as an Easterner, what are we looking for?
Well, chronological order. That's what I'm always looking for.
That's a Westerner.
Oh, Easterner. Sorry. I'm not an Easterner. I was really confused. No, you're just looking for symbolism.
And
what does it start with?
A P.
Passion.
Problems.
Purpose. Oh, problems.
We're looking for problems in the story because
no, that's just as a reader. As a Westerner, I would be looking for problems.
Okay. We're looking for problems in the story, things that don't really make a lot of sense, and that's going to lead us into really the intent of the story. And so there are, go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing because you're thinking, wow, you are a problem right now.
There are some problems, I think, when we look at the story of Noah and the flood. And in chapter 6, verse 5, I believe it's one of them. You say there's a big problem? Yeah. How is it possible?
Make any sense? That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's an entire world.
I don't think it's an Eastern way of thought. I think it's a Western way of thought.
Well, it's just referenced as an Eastern way of thought, but you're probably right. I mean,
because to them, they don't look at that as a problem. They look at that as, well, that makes sense because that's what we know.
Yeah, so we're going to explain some of that. But yes, as a Westerner, we go, okay. And this is if you're arguing against the Bible, this is one of the first stories and really where they like to camp out and they're like, well, you're telling me that the whole world flooded. Well, I'm not telling you that. The Bible is telling you that, but we're going to get to that in just a second. What we are saying, though, is there are some problems. And in verse 5 is where I find one of them. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. How's that possible? Like, I know some people who are like pretty bad people, or I know of people who are pretty bad. I just find it hard to believe that you can put 100 people in a room, even 100 people who are in prison, and think they're only thinking bad things all the time. What's evil in God's eyes? Yes, so that is a good question. What's evil in God's eyes? I mean, it's a really challenging statement, though. And it's interesting that it talks about, this brings up the whole earth. So we had creation, and then the fall of man, it was the corruption of man. And then we get into we get into Cain and Abel, and it's the corruption of relationships and the corruption of the family. And now this corruption and this evil is spreading, and now evidently it
has run rampant.
All of the
And
inhabitants
the human race
of the earth.
Awful.
Yeah. So
I laugh, but I mean that's because it happened already, and
yeah.
It's pretty troubling, actually.
And then, you have any other issues that you want to bring up real quick?
On that verse?
No. In this story.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I think there's one more that's pretty significant at the beginning here. So right after it talks about these people, what does God say in verse 6?
That he regrets having made human beings.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled.
It's crazy, like, so you're New King James?
No, that's the NIV.
The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. Yeah. Yeah, it is a strange word. It's because the King James Version is translated word for word, so it doesn't matter what the context of that word is. It just translates whatever.
Because this says, and the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he regretted, he grieved, he was pained. Yeah. So what did the Lord say?
I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth. But then he goes one step further.
Oh, yeah.
And says, both man and beast.
Everything.
Creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. It almost sounds like he's just lamenting, like just.
Yeah. 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 Do you want to restate that so people can hear it online?
Oh, she said that it's almost like a father.
Yeah.
And say that again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like an earthly father. Keep going. I'm just saying it so that people that are watching later sees it. And yes, when an earthly father sees his kids doing wrong, how grieved he is. And that's the response.
So does this line up with the character of who God is? That it would be his intention to destroy the earth. To destroy all people.
I wouldn't think so.
Like, remember, we've talked through 3 stories so far and recognized the loving compassion of a God who knows when to say enough. And now we're going to say, oh, that God who knows when to say enough, knows when to stop creating. He knows when to stop cursing. He knows how to provide even in spite of our failures. That now, in the midst of the failures of man, he's just going to wipe us out completely. This is the story. It
doesn't seem to line up with the character that we know.
So let's talk about where this story is being shared. When is this story being shared again?
In the wilderness.
In the wilderness. To the Jewish people. Descendants of who?
Jacob.
And?
Abraham. Oh, Abraham, you wanted me to go all the way back.
Let's go back. Yeah.
I was like, well, that's who we just talked about Sunday.
Descendants of Abraham. Because what you're gonna hear refrained over and over again in the Old Testament is, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah. This is the God. So they're being introduced to this God. What we have to understand is this story is not unique to Jewish tradition. If you've never heard that before, I'm going to say it again. This story is not unique Every ancient culture has a story of the earth being destroyed by a flood. Everyone.
So you're talking like Greek mythology?
I'm talking Greeks. I'm talking the Chinese have it. I'm talking Assyrians, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and we're going to talk about one. There's even one that has the same characters, same names.
That's right. I remember that.
But there's a Mesopotamian, and most of them predate the book of Genesis. So this is a common tale. This is a common story, a mythological story. This is a common folklore in their culture.
And by predate, you mean it didn't necessarily happen before the flood. It just means that it was told before this story was told.
It has its origins from before the Genesis story was written.
Okay, but that does, yeah, it obviously wasn't before creation.
Yeah.
I have to wrap my mind around that part of it.
And those cultures predated the Jewish culture.
Right.
Okay. One in particular is
because my Western chronological mind says that can't work, but it can.
Yeah, right. If this is the only story that you've been told,
right,
then so.
Yes.
So when we watched the story of Noah with Russell Crowe, is it Russell Crowe? I'm pretty sure. The movie.
I was like, I didn't know he was in the Bible.
I'm pretty sure it was. And they portray Noah as this crazy guy and these rock giants and all of this stuff. Yes. It's a collaboration of the story of Noah that's told from like 9 different civilizations of the area. One in particular is a Mesopotamian tale of the Epic of Gilgamesh. If you've ever read it, it is very interesting. He travels around and meets all of these Mesopotamian gods. And he interacts with them and gets to know them. And pretty much every time they get angry and get frustrated with him, and he runs for his life. And in this story, we get this character. And I had to write this name down so that I didn't butcher it. And I'm still going to.
Which one? Have fun with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim.
That's how he says it,
is the name of this character that shows up. And this character comes in and hears of the God's plan to destroy the world by a flood. So he makes a raft and puts all of the animals of the world on this raft.
That's a really big raft.
And saves creation from the destruction of these gods.
That's a big
Does it sound familiar?
No, I don't think I've ever heard that story before.
So you're glad you have your boots on. So yeah, it's crazy, right? But this is a common story. So it comes from Mesopotamia. Do you know that there are other terms that we would use for Mesopotamia? Do you know any of them?
I just shook my head no.
The group of Mesopotamians, we would also reference them as Chaldeans. Chaldeans. So who came from Chaldea?
Abraham's family.
Abraham's family. So wait, you're telling me that this folklore story of the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Abraham knew it?
Utnapishtim, would have been told to Abraham and his kids? So this would be a common tale for them.
Like a folklore.
Like a folklore story. And so all of these people and people groups have this historical story. So one of two things is true. Either it's just a story that was common to people, or there was some type of really big flood, and everybody had a different way of explaining it. Either way, the story that we get in Genesis is a story that's going to set apart this God from all the other gods. It is going to be a familiar story that creates a different demonstration of the character of this God that's different from other gods. So, did it happen?
Yes.
We don't know.
I don't know.
Did the Epic of Gilgamesh happen?
I don't know.
Probably not. But Utnapishtim is Noah in the story. And the difference is God did something on purpose. One of the things that's interesting is we start seeing this story echo over and over and over again. And what we see is this statement that's at the beginning. It was that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart were only evil all the time, is a statement that's made in chapter 6, verse 5. But if we fast forward to chapter 9, is it 9? No, chapter 8, verse 21, the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. That's crazy. It's like word for word. That was verse 21. Is it?
I don't know. I was asking you.
So
do I need to ask out loud?
You can ask it out loud.
Is that the end of a chiasm?
So we might have a chiasm here. If you don't remember what a chiasm is, it is a repetition process.
So you're telling me this story has problems and a chiasm?
Has problems and a chiasm. So let's see if we can find our way to the center of this chiasm to find what it is.
That's a really big one.
Looking for. It is very large.
From chapter 6, no wonder we're not reading it all. From chapter 6, verse 5
to chapter 8 verse 25. And here's what we're looking for. 21, sorry. Yep. In the middle here, we get some numbers that are going to be the key to what we're looking for.
So whenever you look at a chiasm, you find those bookends that mirror each other.
Yes.
And then you work your way and you find the very middle.
The very middle.
There will always be something at the very middle.
This one is...
count back verses and count forward verses to meet in the middle. How is the best way to find them?
You're looking for the things that repeat. So it's A, B, C, D. This one is A, B, C, D, E. E, D, C, B, A. A and A are the same.
So we're looking for B.
We're looking for what's next is B. There's a number 7 is the next B. And there's a number 7 that is C. And there is a 40 that is D. And there is a 150 that is E.
Okay, let's find those in there.
And so your center, if you follow this and find your way to the center of this chiasm finds its way at...
Can you hand me my Bible?
Chapter 8, verse 1.
I can't scroll.
Ooh, you okay?
I'm good. I didn't want to knock the table over. Okay.
In verse 24 of chapter 7, the waters flooded the earth for 150 days. So 150, that's the next number from the center.
Slow down.
I can't slow down that much. Go ahead.
So we're going from chapter 6, verse 5, and then that mirrors the other one.
Uh-huh.
And then the next one that you come to is chapter 7 what?
No, it is a number 7. Chapter 7.
The next mirroring you come to is which verse?
7 verse 2. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate.
Okay, so where does that one mirror? Chapter 8, verse.
It is. He waited 7 more days and sent. No. It was 7 days. Yeah, that has to be it.
Which verse is this?
Chapter 8, verse 12. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. But this time it did not return to him.
Okay, and then chapter 7, what?
7 days from now, verse 4. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe up the face of the earth, every living creature that I have made. That is the 7 and 40.
Okay, and then where is that over here?
So in verse 10, he waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark.
Yeah, but where's the 40?
The 40, verse 6 of chapter 8, after 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the ark.
Okay, and then we go back over.
Then it's 150 is in chapter 7, verse 24. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days.
Okay, and then 8.
Now the spring of the deep and the floodgates.
Tell us the verse.
Hold on, I'm not there. Verse 3, the water receded steadily from the earth at the end of the 150 days. The water had gone down.
Okay, so
the middle of it is verse 1 of chapter 8.
So where was the 150 in verse 7 or chapter 7?
24.
Okay.
The middle of the chiasm is chapter 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So think about this image and this statement. But God remembered. Had God lost Noah somehow? No. That is a really interesting statement. And we're going to come back to why that's important here in a minute. So don't forget that spot. But God remembered. There's a reason that statement is there, and we will get to it on the backside here. But something happens here that's very, very interesting. And God sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So what is the picture that you have here, Chelsea? What is the picture? If you are Noah, what do you see?
In verse 8 or chapter 8, verse 1?
Yeah, in chapter 8, verse 1, where is Noah?
In the ark.
He's in the ark.
So I see a bunch of animals.
Does he have access to the outside world right now?
No.
No, he's shut up in this ark. He is isolated. But outside of the ark is a earth that is covered with water and void, and something happens. God causes what?
A wind.
A wind. What is that word? Do you know that word?
Ruach.
Ruach. Ruach is the word here for wind. Have we heard this word before?
In the creation story.
In the creation story. In Genesis chapter 1, it says that the Spirit of God hovered over the earth. The Spirit of God, the Ruach of God, merehefet over the waters. Seems pretty similar, huh?
A little bit.
And this wind blows, and the move of God comes over the earth, and the next thing that happens is Noah opens a window. And light from the outside comes in. And another thing that happens is, so we see this parallel of creation, right? The dividing of light and dark. And the rain stops. So are the clouds still in the sky?
Yes.
And then is there water on the earth?
Uh-huh.
So day 2 of creation, we get this separation of water. There's an expanse between water on the ground, water in the sky. Mm-hmm. And then this wind blows, and the waters start to recede, and what happens? Land starts to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day of creation, he created the land. He separated the waters and set their boundaries, and the earth showed up. Next thing that happens, Noah's like, all right, we should probably figure out what's going on. He releases a bird out into the air. It's day 5 of creation. The birds filled the air. That bird found nowhere to rest, and it comes back. And 7 days later, what happens? He releases the bird out into the air, and it brings back a twig. 7 days later, he releases the bird out, and it doesn't come back. So now there's animals on the ground. And the door is opened from the ark, and all of the animals are released. Now the earth is being repopulated with animals. And God gives this command to the animals and to Noah and his family to be fruitful and multiply, and gives them dominion, says everything on the earth is going to be following them. There's a huge parallel here to the creation story, right? God is reenacting the process of creation. So we've got through day 6 here, and humans are on the earth, and animals are back on the earth. So what should we see next? What should we expect next if we're following the creation story?
Man.
Rest.
Oh, I thought
man's already there.
Oh, I thought you just said animals, following the animals.
Animals and man are back on the earth.
Yeah. So rest, yes.
Rest. We don't see that. It's kind of interesting.
We don't see rest?
We don't see rest. But we see this conversation that God has that seems really strange. And it starts in chapter 9, verse 8. So we're going to read chapter 9, verse 8 through 17. Okay? Are we following along? Are we still good? Okay. So here we go. God has just given this command. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on the earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth. Anything stick out to you there? Anything just feel like, okay, we get it? Anything? I'm asking you, person with a microphone.
Oh, but I thought you were going to let them answer.
Go ahead. Anybody? Anything stand out here where you're like, okay.
You can stop saying my covenant. Now
Yeah,
I got it.
Covenant. It's like,
okay,
hey,
Dad,
I
get it.
Yeah. All right. Are we going to have a covenant between us? Like,
I don't know. Should it be a covenant?
Should it be a covenant? No, I just need some clarification. Is this going to be a covenant? But is there a covenant between me and you? Is it a rainbow? Are we sure that it's going to be a rainbow
covenant?
Is it between the whole earth, or is there something left out? Like, if you were smart, Alec, these are the questions that we would ask after this statement. The word covenant or brit in the Hebrew is used 7 times in these 10 verses of Scripture. In this short passage of conversation from God to Noah, the statement of brit or covenant is used 7 times. And there is, in verse 8, the statement covenant, and on the back end, covenant. And it seems like a very repetitious thing.
What do we have here?
There is, so what we have the audacity to think that there might be a smaller chiasm inside of this larger chiasm. And when we track this thing, there are 7 covenants.
The word covenant is said 7 times.
That's right. The word for earth is used 7 times. The word for clouds is used 5 times in the Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
We only see it translated 4 times in the English, but it's 5 times in the Hebrew. The word that we translate rainbow, which is actually bow,
mm-hmm.
They don't have a word for rainbow, it's just bow. It's used 3 times. Interesting thing about all these odd numbers is they all have a center, and they all center at one place. And it's in 9, the end of 13, and the beginning of 14. And it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth, whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the cloud. That's the middle. And if you reorganize this, it's whenever you see the rainbow in the cloud, that is the confirmation. That is the confirmation. It's the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. So, what are we talking about? What we're talking about is a covenant. And in covenant, the most common version of a covenant is this suzerain vassal covenant. The suzerain and the vassal are 2 separate entities in a covenant. The suzerain being the powerful one, the one of strength. The vassal is the one of less strength, of less power, the less powerful one. In a traditional suzerain vassal covenant, it is a commitment of the suzerain made to the vassal, the less powerful one, that if the less powerful one presents this sign or this symbol or this whatever, then the suzerain will remember the covenant made and not exercise their power on the vassal. It was the responsibility of the weaker one to remember and be able to produce whatever the sign of the covenant was, to be a reminder for the stronger person, for the suzerain. Okay? That's not how this covenant is laid out. Do you have the ability to make a rainbow in the sky? No.
Well, I mean, if you have a water hose. But I can't, make one just appear.
But even still, you can go outside at night and turn on your water hose all you want. You're not making a...
You're right. I cannot make one.
If you don't have the sun that is in the sky, right, you don't have a rainbow. And you can make a rainbow with the water hose, but that's not the covenant. The covenant is a rainbow in the clouds.
Right, because I have one in my glasses right now. I can see it with the light.
So what do we see here? We see the symbol of God, of a covenant with His people, that I'm going to not destroy the earth. I'm going to stop my destruction. And the symbol that I'm never going to act this way, I'm never going to destroy this way again, is this rainbow, this bow. It's not a rainbow. That's not how it's literally translated. We call it a rainbow because we understand that's what it is. But the literal word is a bow in the sky. What is a bow?
It's a weapon.
It's a weapon. And if this bow is the image of a weapon, which direction is this weapon pointed?
Toward God.
Towards God. It's created by God and aimed in the direction of God. So what we see here is this covenant that God is making. There's so much here that we can unpack for so long. But we see this covenant that God is making to where He puts the image of the covenant outside of the control of the vassal. And He puts it in the sky, pointed towards Himself, for Him to remember His covenant. Which takes us back to the center of the first chiasm. Then God remembered Noah. He remembered His commitment. He was reminded of His covenant and His commitment to man. And so to make sure that man was aware of His commitment, He gave him the covenant of the rainbow. So in the first few chapters in the creation stories, we see a God who knows when to say enough, when He knows when to stop creating. And in this story, we see a God who knows when to stop destroying. He knows when to say enough. And His character is centered around love and providing for us, providing for Himself. Like if we know the New Testament, we know that God providing for Himself the image of the covenant that He's making with man is absolutely in line with who He is. And this just speaks. I was actually going to use the Noah story in my Sunday morning stuff, but I knew we were getting to it so quickly that I wasn't going to preach about Noah on Sunday and then preach about Noah again on Wednesday. It didn't make sense. So here we are, this image of God, knowing when to say enough, still producing the character of El Shaddai, the God who knows when to say enough. And it's such a great picture of love. We're going to break out do some discussion groups. I encourage you, if you're watching online, to engage with us, message us, get together with people, have this conversation because it is such an important conversation to have. So have a blessed week, and we're going to break out into small groups.